when it comes to black people, we constantly stand in a place of scarcity. Even for those of us that have a lot of things, that have a lot of status, or have bells and whistles and clap it ups from the Matrix, we fundamentally stand in a place of scarcity. And that is because it's a mentality and it's a social culture that has been created and that we've accepted. We have not adjusted ourselves and shifted our consciousness. You know, the grandma used to say you can take the IGGA out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the IGGA, right? The mentality hasn't been shifted. You just move from one environment to another environment. You move from one tax bracket to another tax bracket, but you still scarcity. You're still hood. You're still, I'm down. I don't really understand that metric, but unfortunately it hoards our space. That fills up our space. It impedes relationships. It impedes the way that we have relationships. It impedes the way that we grow as a community, and it impacts our self-concept in a negative way. So I live this work. I teach this work. My fundamental practice around this work stands on the fact that I'm experiencing the dysfunctions of our people for this work. It has literally impeded my lived experiences, my everyday living experience in pursuit of happiness and my trek towards living an abundant life. And because people make things happen, people don't make things happen. This is not strictly about effort. I've discovered that this is not strictly about merit. I used to say when I was younger, I can't be outworked. I used to say, you can't outwork me. I'm a busy bee from the time I clock in to the time I clock out. I even used to have issues with coworkers who used to say, you making us look bad. Why you doing all of that? You ain't got to do all of that. All of that ain't necessary. Like, bizarre behavior on the job from other black people. Because when they installed that whole concept of affluent black people, they started installing management, middle management, and some upper management as black people. So you had to make it through their psychosis before you could rank up into spaces and places, because they put them down lower, allegedly to continue to sell this concept of affluent black people. Now you've ranked up, you change your tax bracket, but you still have a scarcity mentality. You still have a hood mentality. Even all the travel and all the being in places, spaces, and interacting with people has not refined you. It didn't change your behavior. It didn't change your mannerisms. It didn't change the way that you fundamentally think. It hasn't grown you as a human being, because if you have an issue with someone else's pursuit on their journey that doesn't impact you in any negative way, but yet you still make yourself an impediment to that person, you have still the baseline of development still hasn't occurred for you. With all the clapping ups and bells and whistles and regurgitating and statuses and shifting and tax brackets and all those things, it still hasn't occurred for you. And this is the work. And then this is, for me, this is like totally therapeutic, but it also allows me to continue to stand up and say, I'm here. I matter. Because these things have been happening to me for years. Didn't just start yesterday. It's been happening progressively, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. Because the older I get, the more my habits of excellence look like something foreign to most black people. Because black people, no matter what they tell you, they actually have a learned helplessness. They actually accept the subordinate posture. Because greatness and that level of morality and ethics and being is called being self-righteous. That's what those people, because those people have to make space for there to be exploit in our society. So there has to be a little opening that allows exploit to occur. And it's in a reasoning, and it is in a way that we process information in our society. So as long as that behavior, oh no, you can't be so good. You can't be so ethical. You can't be so moral. See, for me, there was no one in my space that I saw that I wanted to emulate. There still isn't anyone that I would want to emulate. There's things that I learned. A broke clock is right twice a day. I've come to learn that even when people are rhetoricing, I take the knowledge and keep it moving. Because human beings are human beings, and so many of us, we are fallible. They just, I intended to be in integrity with this work. So I talk the talk, I walk the walk. I also don't accept foolishness. I have very clear boundaries. You know, I'll tell you something else. You know, have you ever seen someone thinking? People don't realize I've been in relationship, family, friend, community, work, what have you. Once people begin to make themselves in opposition to me, like, and it starts with subtleties, like overtly disagreeing or finding the opposite of what I'm saying, to call themselves trying to make me wrong. I've been dealing with this 30 years. And let me tell you, this is the foundation. Once they find me wrong, once they got to find, here's a big white wall of all the amazingness. There's a tiny little speck of imperfection right there. They look for that. That's what they're looking for. That's what they need to find. That is in of itself lets me know I'm actually doing good work. I'm doing the work and I'm maturing as an individual, as a spiritual being, as a being. It's letting me know that it's working. Because people respond to the speck. Not talking about all this great work, because they can't see that. Because they don't have that in themselves. They can't accept that all this great work is me. They're looking at that tiny little speck. And when I realize that you call yourself friend, community, relationship, you're somebody who's an advocate, you're an educator, you're I've even had spouse, you're a partner, but you're picking at the minute imperfection. Have you ever seen somebody thinking? That's a hater. That's an ops. That's somebody who is going to be acting and behaving against your best interest because of what? They're jealous. They're in envy. They're in envy and they have no impulse control. Because that's a subtlety. That is a very subtle issue with their impulse control. And that makes them dangerous because it depends on what they'll do with that energy. And society today, we just woosah. But we are in a place of scarcity. And I'm checking you. I want you to be clear about it. I want you to go in there and I want you to find it. I want you to root it out. I want you to go in there. I want you to file through the halls of your mind. And some of y'all going to have to dig real deep. Because it's been there. It's been buried for so long that you didn't even know that it was there. So it has been compounded by years and years and years and years of the things and the things. And it's going to be hard for you to find it. But I'm telling you, I am the woman who lightens the darkness. I've not been a place where it didn't show up. I've not been nowhere. I've not been among anyone where it didn't eventually show up. And this is when I know the relationship is on a decline. Because I'm not going to accept that. I give grace up to a very small amount now, less than I used to. Back in the days, folks used to get years of trying to figure themselves out and adjust to my kindness because we don't want to accept that goodness from other black people. We don't want to accept it because most of us don't have it in us. We haven't developed it yet. We're wearing a costume of what kind, cordial, and niceties look like. We have not developed an internal code where I don't care. I'm rooting for all black people. I'm a humanist. I'm rooting for people. I'm rooting for the possibility of humanity as a whole. But as an African person, I'm rooting for all black people. And if I can lend a hand, I will. Oftentimes, it might not necessarily be a money or what have you, but it's definitely, I'm a very well knowledgeable individual. I can offer some insight, some reflection, something good that's going to help you, and it always does. Because most people are not reaching for what I'm reaching for, and that is an evolved human being, an evolved experience, spiritual experience within this social landscape, an ability to become whole and fully functional and live among our society without having the hiccups around people and their weirdness. Like, you do you. I literally let people do them. I don't engage in certain things. I'm not gonna. You're not gonna make me. I've never been a follower, even from 5, 6, 7 years old in elementary school. I've never been a follower. I've always had the capacity to think for myself. So I ain't joining no crews and clubs. Never have. Down with the mean girls. Down with the bad bully, the bully cliques and bully clubs. Down with them, because they are the opposition of African progress as a whole. Because if you cannot see the best interest and love on an African strictly because you're an African, you don't have to earn that. That's not a status that you get. This is why people think, oh, Nephrai, you make people feel special. That's right, because I treat you in your highest possibility from the first time we engage. Now it's you, and every single time, almost 100% of the time, they knock that down little by their reflexive, dysfunctional behaviors. African, we got to do something about that. Sawubona.